F-35, the Lightning II, Fat Amy, the best 5th gen fighter and perhaps the most advanced plane in the world. The F-35 has captured my imagination since I first heard about it. I remember that day too. It was like 7th grade and my science teacher was probably hungover or something and put on a video about the JSF competition. This must have been like 2003, 2004, mind you. The Lockheed X-35 versus the Boeing X-32, which by the way, the X-32 might be one of the goofiest, ugliest, yee-ass aircraft I've ever seen. The goal of the competition was to find a single airframe that could replace the A-10, the F-16, the F-A-18, and the Harrier. So one plane for the entire military. And I had a pretty amateur and fleeting understanding of modern military at the time, most of which came from Command and Conquer generals. But watching this reality TV style competition between the next fighter jets to be used by the US Armed Forces, it really sparked my interest in military aviation. Thankfully, the X-35 won, and it was adopted as the F-35 in 2006. Now, for a little bit of military drama. Not many people over the last decade have had a lot of nice things to say about the F-35. Mostly due to these two eyebrows attached to this amalgamation of lies known as Pierre Sprey. Now, Sprey is a jazz musician who would sell audiophile equipment, but he also made friends with this other guy who was really good at flying simulated dogfights against trainee pilots in the Air Force, and he also just kind of outlined how to think. I don't know. Anyway, Sprey pretty much lied that he designed the A-10, the F-15, the F-16, and the F-22. He didn't, and thankfully Sprey died a few years ago. Now, Sprey was hired by Russia Today, a state-owned Russian news channel whose entire job is pro-Russian propaganda, which usually means anti-American propaganda. This Russian-based news station, who usually broadcasts in Russian, had Sprey on a number of times to be broadcast in English, talk about the F-35, saying it's terrible and bad and sucks, etc., etc. That, coupled with a single instance of a simulated dogfight involving an F-16 and an unfinished F-35, where the F-35 lost, created a media storm and the perception that it was, well, just a bad plane. Crazy thing is, after Sprey died, all of a sudden, news started coming out about how the F-35 actually fucks super hard. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, why is F-35 big good? Well, there's a few reasons, but before we get into that, let's talk about the different variants of F-35. Because it was supposed to be one plane for the entire military, yeah, that didn't happen. There's 3 different versions of the plane. Well, 5 if you want to be technical, but 3 that matter. There's the A, B, and C variants. Easy way to remember which is which. The letter corresponds to where it lands. A is for airfield, C is for carrier, and B is for boosies. Oh. Now the main differences. The A variant, used by the Air Force, is the lightest and cheapest, and because of that it's the most exported. It features an internal cannon, standard landing gear and wingspan, and has a refueling port rather than a probe to make use of the Air Force's aerial refueling boom arms. It is also, at the time of writing, the only one capable of carrying nuclear weapons. The Navy C variant has a slightly larger wingspan and rear elevators, which help with slower landing speeds. It also gives it a bit more fuel and range. To fit in carrier's hangars, the wings can also fold. It's been equipped with beefed up landing gear to help with the more intense landings needed during cattle bar operations. It lacks an internal cannon, but it can carry a gun pod on its belly, and for in-air refueling it has a probe rather than a port. The B version for the Marines is the cool one. It's the one that performs VTOL or vertical takeoff landing because it can swivel its engine to point straight down and has a big ass fan in the middle of it. However, STOVL might be more appropriate as it usually doesn't take off vertically. It probably could, although perhaps with no payload and less fuel. I've seen it done, but it might be a doctrine thing. Anyway, same thing as the C variant when it comes to tankers and the gun. Due to the fan being basically dead weight when not in use, this version has the least range and is by far the most expensive. As for the other 2 technically still F-35 variants, there's the X-35, the prototype, and the F-35I, which is a custom model used by Israel. It's pretty much an F-35A that's been optimized for Israeli military operations, so probably like Gaza. There's also plans for a 2-seat version, which sounds pretty fucking cool. Anyway, that's all the stuff people know about the jets, like the normie shit. What you can kind of just see from the outside. But that's not what makes them super fucking cool. You hear the phrase, "We don't know anything about the F-35 because it's all classified." And well, yes, but also no. Like, we have a pretty decent knowledge base of what the plane can do, but not so much how it does it. So let's go over its lesser known capabilities. And yes, I know this is supposed to be about video games. We're getting to that. First is the ideology in regards to its cockpit design. Most jets, even more modern ones like the F-22, have a lot of analog instrumentation. Hell, the cockpit of an F-15 looks like the control center for the Titanic's boiler room. The F-35 went almost entirely digital. Other planes will have like 2 to 3 MFCDs or multi-function color displays. These are typically low-resolution monitors with physical buttons surrounding them for use with radar, munition systems, targeting pods, stuff like that. The F-35 said, fuck that, you can MFC these nuts. Giant iPad. All of the instrumentation is one large MFC TD, or multifunction color touch display. And okay, I pulled that term out of my ass, but if it isn't that, it should be, because that's basically what it is. It's divided up into 4 main sections, and the pilot can customize what the section displays. The cockpit also lacks a traditional HUD and displays the information usually thrown up on there to a head-mounted display. It's like augmented reality. It's fucking cool. Now, the plane is covered in all kinds of sensors in a system known as the AN/AAQ-37 DAS, or Distributed Aperture System. It can basically get thermal imaging data from the areas immediately around the plane in full spherical 360 degrees and detect things like missile launches, track friendly and enemy aircraft, help with navigation, night vision, and even targeting data. Working in conjunction with the DAS is the EOTS, or Electro-Optical Targeting System, which is basically a Gucci-ass integrated targeting pod. This thing can see for dozens of miles in every direction except above the jet, in thermal and color vision. It's also a laser designator for laser-guided bombs, or can see enemy aircraft. Hell, the pilot can even link it to his HMD, and it can be used to look directly through the aircraft. It also has a super cool phase array radar, which I am way too dumb to fully understand. I think it works like noise canceling headphones and pretty much makes the radar like steerable so you can lock onto multiple things. The F-35 can also cyberbully you with its AN/ALQ-239 Barracuda electronic warfare suite. The pilot can use this technology to interrupt enemy radar, including incoming missile tracking, jam communications, or enemy data link, GPS systems, stuff like that. Electronic warfare has become a huge part of the modern battlefield, and it's important that high-end fighters like Amy here can hold their own when dedicated EW aircraft aren't around. A few other cool notes are the obvious internal weapons bay, optional external pylons, drag behind radar decoy and radar absorbent material, or RAM coding, and the standard stuff like RWR, autopilot, GPS, navigation, computer, etc. Now, that's all well and good, but why is this so important for me to tell you? Well, my friends, situational awareness. All this data is compiled and shown to the pilot on a program called the TSD, or Tactical Situation Display. The TSD will, in real time, without input, show the pilot everything in a definable area a sensor has picked up. Friend, foe, threat, unknown. Hell, this is one of those things we're not exactly sure the extent of what it can do. And while that's useful enough on its own, the F-35 can data link. It can take information from other F-35s, other fighters, AWACS, ground radars, probably even ground forces like tanks and shit, maybe even satellites, and display that info on the TSD in real time. It's like they're playing an RTS game, but the fog of war has disappeared. The networked information is the true strength of the F-35. Now that you've got a pretty firm grasp on the publicly known abilities, let's get into why you clicked on this video. I mean, other than I personally sent it to you and I begged you to watch it. I have 7 games, which is honestly more than I expected there to be, which have the F-35 in them. Some are mods, sure, but I feel like they're high quality enough to be featured, or at least well known enough. I haven't really ordered these in any particular way, except the last one, which I think is the best representation of the aircraft in gaming, so without further ado, let's get into it.
What's up? Can a low come up in your crib?
Man, fuck you. I'll see you at work.
Oh, nigga, don't hate me because I'm beautiful, nigga. Maybe if you got rid of that old yee-yee ass haircut you got, you get some bitches on your dick. Oh, better yet, maybe Tanisha will call your dog ass if she ever stop fucking with that brain surgeon, the lawyer she fucking with, nigga.
What?
It's hard to think GTA 5 is 11 years old. I used to play this game regularly, especially when the PC version dropped. I always loved the planes in this game. I feel like a good chunk of flight sim people got their start in GTA. And I mean, look at the selection. You've got the not C-130, the not F-16, the not Harrier, and most recently, the not F-35. The F-160 Raiju is like a cursed love child between an F-35 and the Su-75 Checkmate, also known as the Femboy. A plane which, by the way, as far as we know, only exists as a plywood mock-up. Funny enough, there's a livery in the game that's been taken from the Su-57, Russia's current 5th gen fighter, but they only have like 12 of them, so it doesn't really count. Oh no, wait, one just blew up. 11 of them. Anyway, how does this fare as an F-35? Well, First off, GTA doesn't have anything even resembling a realistic flight model. Sure, it feels okay when flying it, but seeing it from any other angle, it's comically slow. The map isn't big enough to really allow for faster speeds, but it feels like it maxes out at 130 knots. Add on to that, the hover mode is pretty much magic. But credit where it's due, the weapon bay looks good. And you can close them to go stealth mode, which removes you from the in-game mini-map, which is actually a huge advantage. The engine swivel and lift fan look pretty good as well. The cockpit is honestly not the worst, showing the MFC TD, and even has some programs up on it, even though you can't use them except for the horizon and heading indicator. The cockpit does have 2 joysticks rather than a HOTAS, but that's true of all jets in GTA. And I'll give them credit, the EOTS is even on the nose, even if it's just the shape with no glass. The missiles are hilariously short range, and it has 2 internal guns on either side, but they seem to be single-barrel autocannons rather than a rotary cannon. Overall, you can tell what they were going for with that trademark, legally distinct Rockstar design seen on almost everything in GTA. But most of the cool functionality of the F-35 isn't there, other than the stealth and VTOL. I give it a 4 out of 10.
Oh my god, Mother Goose 1 has been shot down.
Where'd the missile come from?
Mage 2 fired that.
It was OG. A friendly missile hit him.
Ace Combat. Fighters, the anime. I started this series way back with Ace Combat 4 Shattered Skies on the PS2, which, by the way, hands down has the best OST of any video game ever. But today we're going to look at the most recent entry in the series, Skies Unknown. Now, Ace Combat has been, and always will be, very arcade-like. It's not a sim, it's fully a video game. And that's okay, it's fun. Angle of attack, lift, what was that? That doesn't matter here.
Deja vu, I just been in this place before. Higher on the street, and I know it's my time to go.
Also worth noting, your missiles reload on your wings in this game while you're in the sky, which is pretty cool. We should figure out how to do that in real life. Anyway, in this game, there's just one F-35, which is specifically an F-35C, which is an odd choice, I find. I feel like an F-35A would have made more sense in the context it's used. As far as how the plane is modeled, it's incredible. The model is spot on. The cockpit looks very accurate, as are all the programs that are shown on the MFC TD. You can play through the game with pretty much any jet and get the same experience other than the weapons the jet can carry. I'm sure there's small differences in performance of each airframe, but honestly, I can't tell. The plane, as it's configured in the game, isn't very stealthy. In fact, it's in its non-stealth configuration. It has the gun pod underneath, and it has all its weapons on wing-mounted pylons. In fact, from what I can tell, there's no use of the internal weapons bay. The plane looks beautiful, but there's nothing really here to make it an F-35 in terms of mechanics. I give it a 48% rating. Okay, I know this game has had some issues since it came out. I'll be honest, the last Battlefield I played was 3, 4? I'm not sure, it's been a minute either way. Now, in 2042, they've named their jet the F-35E, a hypothetical future variant. From what I can tell, this is just an F-35B, but it has some kind of newer software. I say that because nothing on the MFCTD is real. Again, credit where it's due, the model of the plane looks really good. Gun pod on the bottom looks accurate. Cockpit looks good. Doesn't seem to use the internal weapon bays at all, and it only seems to carry short-range missiles in the gun, leaving out any bombs or anything longer range. But the biggest problem here is the map. Even the biggest map in 2042 is way too small to make use of a jet like this. You almost constantly have to be in a turn or you very quickly run out of bounds. Mind you, I don't actively play this game, so maybe I'm missing something. And if I am, please leave it in the comments. I bought this game just to make this video, and thankfully the Steam summer sale was going on, so it was only $5. Anyway, as with GTA, there's not much here that makes it an F-35 other than it can VTOL. I give it a pass.
Somebody once told me the world is gonna roll me. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed. She was looking kinda dumb with her finger and her thumb in the shape of an L on her forehead.
Okay, now we're getting into the better ones. I know I said before I didn't order these, but that was a bit of a lie. The last 3 games, yeah, they weren't it. These next few actually start to look at what the plane can do and incorporate those capabilities into the game. So, Arma 3. I've done my fair share of Arma 3 Milsim, most of it as a pilot. Worth saying that the F-35 here is a mod, but shit, like most of Arma 3 is a mod. And you know what? It's pretty good. The model is much lower fidelity than the last 2, but Arma 3 is what, like 40 years old or something. The engine has a lot of limitations. I'll say it fits the level of fidelity of the base game, so at least it looks consistent. Now, as far as armament goes, it's very realistic. You can load it out as stealth with 2 AIM-120s, 8 GBUs, or 6 AIM-120s, or some other bombs and cruise missiles, or you can load the wings with shitloads of AIM-120s or bombs. Finally, on top of that, the EOTS system is finally in play. I mean, I think most planes in Arma 3 have a pretty much 360 view targeting pod. So while this doesn't make it super special, it does make sense. You have to zoom into like a use mode to actually control it, but your situational awareness is severely diminished when you do so. And going up or down? No idea. But you can look at it in the cockpit, which is rare for Arma. And while you can't actually interact with the MFCTD, as far as I can tell, it's nice that it's actually somewhat useful. The flight model in Arma is probably the best game that we've talked about so far, but it still isn't what I'd call realistic. Arma being a milsim sandbox, they've done a pretty good job of putting the F-35 in performing the role that it's meant to perform. I'll give it a B-. Now, onto the sims, the actual flight simulators. Closest thing you can get to flying without a license or a hijack. DCS, or Digital Combat Simulator, is the first we're going to be going over. DCS is a breeding ground for probably just some of the worst people you can meet on the internet. It has study level aircraft you can fly. Study level, by the way, is a way of saying you have no life outside of flying fake cartoon planes and you think that you're better than other people. There's a lot of elitism in DCS since it's so complicated, and sorry, that's not the point of this video. So the F-35 in DCS, well, there isn't one. There's an unofficial mod. DCS lets third-party developers make modules for aircraft and then sell them, usually for around $60 to $80 per aircraft. The F-35 uses the F-15 module, and I was about to pay around $60 for the F-15 to use a free mod. So I just kind of looked it up. It uses the flight model of the F-15, which is super realistic for an F-15. Which is much different to an F-35. So, nail in the coffin, it also uses the F-15 cockpit when configured for air-to-air, and it uses some Russian plane for air-to-ground. So again, not very F-35, and on top of all that, the stealth is not simulated. So it's pretty much a really nice F-35 model for an F-15. 0 gold stars. Next, we have Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is usually considered a good sim for general aviation. It can be study level, and it's even used in full cockpit high-level simulators. Now, similar to DCS, third-party devs can produce and release aircraft on an official store that you can access in-game. And there's an F-35 pack with all 3 main variants. It's also worth noting that the pack is much cheaper than anything in DCS. Now, while there are no weapons available in the version you can get from the official Microsoft store, this is by far the best F-35 we have seen so far. Startup sequence is accurate. You can actually use the MFCTD, first other than the limited functionality in Arma 3. You can bring up the TSD, even though it has no real information to display other than navigational data. You can also bring up the EOTS, however, it's basically just a few set angles of the surrounding terrain. It's nothing special. The VTOL capabilities on the B model seem very accurate based on what I've seen from an F-35B in person. The C model's lower speed handling is also simulated very well. The actual 3D model is without a doubt the best we've seen so far, passing the one in Ace Combat. If this thing had usable weapons and a better EOTS, this would be it. This would be the best F-35 in gaming. I give it a
4 out of 5.
Being bada boom, Mr. Worldwide, when I step up in the room, dale. And today I want to ask you, damn girl, is you from the ghetto? Because I'm trying to get a piece of that culo. Ha, dale. Esa jevita tiene tremendo culo.
VTOL VR is my favorite flight sim. It's also worth noting it's made by a single person. Now, I call it a sim, but it's probably equal parts game and simulator. While the other games I mentioned here can be played in VR, VTOL was built for it from the ground up. All the controls in the cockpits can be reached out and touched with your VR hands. It currently has 6 flyable aircraft. Each of them are kind of a near future amalgamation of a couple of different aircraft. None of them are actual airplanes that exist currently. One of them is the F-35A Ghost, which is pretty much an F-35. To go through all the differences quickly, it has forward canards rather than rear elevators. It has the internal cannon of the F-35A, the wings, landing gear, and cattle bar equipment of the C, and the lift fan swiveling engine of the B. It also has larger internal storage with side bays like on the F-22. Radar and radar cross-section are both modeled with a lot of detail in this game, and the F-45 can take advantage of that as it's the only stealth plane. If you fly with no pylons on your wings, all of a sudden you become much more stealthy. The best part of this aircraft is that the TSD works, even with data linked information from other sources. The EOTS also has full functionality too, even being able to display on the HMD to look through the plane, which is a first from what we've seen. It has active tracking for missiles that can be displayed on real time on the HMD too, and you can even use the Barracuda to jam enemy missiles or aircraft. Now, while the 3D model is stylized to make sure it can run well on almost any modern PC, it fits within the world and is well thought out, kind of like in Arma 3. I say the F-35 is my favorite aircraft, but the reason for that is almost entirely due to flying the F-45. And this is, without a doubt, the best representation of the F-35 in gaming. So, that's all I got. I might make more of these. I have some ideas. F-22, A-10, F-16, AC-130 in gaming. I don't know, we'll see. If you like what you saw here today, consider subscribing. If I got anything wrong, tell me what a fucking idiot I am in the comments. And most importantly, if I piqued your interest in the F-35, check out Real Engineering's video on it, Red Wrench Films' video on the different versions. Mega Projects did some on it too, and Laserpig's video, Shut Up About the F-35. All are a good time. They'll be linked down in the description or the pinned comment or something. I don't know. They'll be down there somewhere. Just look for it. And if you're still here, thank you for watching. You can leave now. Goodbye. Go on. Get out of here. Go. I'm leaving.